Hi, my name's Josh Steffler.
And my name's Greg Hill. We're with Freedom Free for All TV, and we are Change Victoria.
Something's fishy in Victoria, and it's not Machosen, it's not the culture of politics, and it is not the sewage treatment plant. Greg, what do you think that smell is?
It smells like to me the Canada Day terrorist plot that's here in Victoria just a few days ago. I mean, today's the 5th of July, so it's just 4 days ago. That event, it reeks of government-sponsored state terrorism, and there's a couple of questions that I have for you that I still have to look at the circumstances around this supposed terrorist event. So, Josh, what do you think about? How would you describe who these people are?
Well, all of the news, all of the information that we have is from the media right now and from the RCMP. So we have to go from official sources. Officially, these people were on income assistance, so they were poor, almost destitute. When you're on welfare, you don't have money to go out and buy a couple pressure cookers. You don't have money to go back and forth from Victoria to Abbotsford.
Well, because the ferry costs $80 each way to get your car on. So, I mean, that's a couple $100 just for one trip.
And I don't know about you, but a lot of our viewers out there may be on welfare. I'd wonder if you were able to go back and forth from Victoria to Abbotsford if you were on social assistance.
There's these other circumstances around these bombs. When you look at the photos from the RCMP and how these things were put together, the units look brand new, okay? And those would probably cost anywhere from $50 to $100 each. So by the time you add that times 3 with all the other stuff, that's another couple $100. So these people must have been saving for a little while, or else they might have had help somehow.
Well, I think that the official news sources have said that the RCMP was involved since March or February. So they have answers. I wonder what they're going to tell us about how these people afforded all of these things when most people on income assistance have a hard time getting by day to day just eating healthy, nutritious food.
Right.
Let alone having the disposable income to hop on a ferry to drive around Victoria. So gas, with the price of gas, that's probably another $20 to $50 from here to Abbotsford and back, depending on what they drive. And then catching the ferry back, we're looking at another $200.
Well, the landlord said that John, is it John Nuttall?
Yeah.
He asked her for $20 to tide him over for the week. So she lent him $20 a week ago. So, I mean, it seems like they don't have funds, and that it's kind of a life cycle thing for them, and that, and to pull something of this magnitude off, it requires planning and ingenuity and skills that you'd need to create these supposed bombs. And when I look at these bombs, they're brand new. The photos have all of the nuts and bolts that were supposed to go in there. They said the RCMP said that these bombs were ready to go. But when you look at the photos, all the nuts and bolts are in the box, like they're brand new. They're sorted. They're clean. The pipe or the pressure cookers themselves looks, essentially spotless, except for one photo of one with some old rusty nails in there. But also the mechanics behind actually creating a pipe bomb. You have to have welding skills. You have to know how to wire the circuitry for the timing device. We didn't even see photos of timing devices, so I still have questions. Where are those things? How did they get these skills? And who could have helped them to do this?
Who could have helped them, indeed. Also, it was reported that these guys were drug users. So I don't know if people, I think it was reported that they did meth and were recovering heroin addicts, because the CBC went into their apartment and took some pictures, including one of a vial of methadone. So I don't know how people that are addicted to meth, they have higher priorities than building bombs and learning how to weld, learning how to wire these things their prerogative is to get high on meth. So where did they get these bombs? Where did they get the knowledge? And then we come into this new term that the media and the RCMP have coined called self-radicalization. And the RCMP sexifies it up by dropping the Al-Qaeda without providing any evidence that these people were linked to Al-Qaeda. They make specific note that they weren't linked to any mosques in town. So where does this Al-Qaeda come from? And what does self-radicalization actually mean?
Well, what I think it means is that it's a new phrase where it can basically label anybody a terrorist, or you're self-radicalized construction worker, or you could be a self-radicalized guitar player. You could be self-radicalized because you found a passion for something, and it's a way of building animosity and fear and painting a picture that may not actually exist in real life.
So do you think that these people actually had the motive? Where did the motive come to bomb innocent civilians and children on Canada Day? Where would these guys have come up with the idea to put a bomb or three bombs on the legislature lawn, and what would have radicalized them so much that they desired to harm children? They had to know that there would be children there. This is a family event. What drives someone to potentially harm children in this way?
Well, I don't know. But what I've seen from the evidence and from what the RCMP have said is that the RCMP had full control of these inert devices, and there was never any issue against public safety. So
what is inert? Can you explain what inert is?
So inert essentially means that it's a non-combustible, self-defeating, flat substance. So
like that the chemicals would not react to each other.
They would not react, exactly. Okay. But what you've seen is that if there's this motive, but the RCMP was able to guarantee that with 40,000 people at the legislature, the RCMP were very specific in saying that they could guarantee that they were in full control of these devices the whole time, and that there was never any risk to public safety. That's why they
So if they were in full control, what does that even mean? That if the RCMP was in full control of these inert devices, how can they be charged with possessing explosive devices when they weren't explosive devices?
Yeah.
And
well, let me ask you this. Let me just say, so with the motive, why would they hand over the devices to the RCMP to facilitate the placement of these bombs? These bombs did not look fully constructed, and if they were that motivated to make sure that these things went off, then how could these two supposed terrorists be so sure that they could leave them in the hands of somebody else? And who were these people that were helping to facilitate, and how did the RCMP have so much control that they can guarantee public safety and not evacuate 40,000 people on Canada Day? It just seems like the motive for these two people is not really there. Seems like the RCMP had more motive to be involved in this than anybody else.
Almost like it's a feel-good story for the RCMP. Recently, I think it was RCMP and CSIS were facing budget cuts, and so isn't it a convenient time for them to save the day? Look, what would have happened if budget was cut even more? Maybe we should be giving more money back to the RCMP and CSIS so that they can stop more threats like this.
Oh, sure. And then you have CSIS, they always have their go-to people on CBC, CTV. These are the CSIS representatives that can speak very explicitly about these types of activities and drop these buzzwords about self-radicalization. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I don't think that they were self-radicalized, and I have questions about what it actually means that the RCMP were in control of the bombs the entire time. If they are in control of the bombs the entire time, they either had to have some guy involved with them involved in the construction? And does this mean that they might have led them on, that they troll, like I think this FBI has been caught numerous times trolling radical sites or other websites looking for people who are angry, who are disenfranchised, who are poor, and have a lot of anger against the state or against capitalism or against our society. And so they help facilitate this anger into action. I don't see how these two virtually destitute social assistance provided people could have the ability, the motive, or the expertise to pull this off without being goaded along.
Well, if they had, and in that situation, so if the RCMP did have boots on the ground infiltrating these people and working with them and helping to move this process forward, that is essentially what you would call entrapment. And entrapment is illegal. And it's for that to happen, that would be essentially treason under our common law system, and treason against the RCMP for helping to facilitate these actions. And so we have to make sure that everybody is held accountable, and that we follow judicial procedure and not just claim that people are guilty before proven innocent. It's the other way around. You're innocent until proven guilty. And that goes for civilians and police officers.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say that that would also apply to the RCMP. We can't just come out and say that the RCMP did this. We don't know. But you have to look at that old saying, qui bono, who benefits? Where, like, follow the money. Who would benefit? How does John and Amanda benefit from bombing Canada Day versus how does CSIS and RCMP benefit from stopping this terrorist plot? Who benefits more? If you sit them on a scale and weigh them, it looks to me like the RCMP and CSIS would have more to gain in the publicity of being the heroes. And, you know, I believe them when they say that they were in full control of the bomb at all times, because these are still responsible men. They swear oaths to uphold the peace. So I don't believe that they would have let it go through if they didn't have control of the bombs, and that they would have arrested them before. I don't believe in any way that they would have let real bombs be planted on the legislature, right? Mm-hmm. So who do you think would benefit more from this, Amanda and John, or?
Well, absolutely. I can't see enough of an ideology that's entrenched enough for these people who were engaged in society, who, from people that know them, have said that they were nice people. And I'm not trying to defend these two suspects, but I'm just looking at the case. And for me, who benefited the most? It would certainly be the RCMP. And we know that, you know, the RCMP is a for-profit company. It's a
we don't know that. I don't think the average viewer that's watching Shaw TV or watching this on YouTube would understand that the RCMP is a for-profit corporation.
Well, so here's the thing. The RCMP, we hand out contract work to the RCMP in various municipalities throughout the country so that they can do policing services for each individual city. And so that's the profit part for them. And so there's the matter of building credibility. There's a matter of getting extended budget.
Well, I'd like to touch on the credibility. With all of the recent, let's just go back 1 or 2 years, with all of the recent publicity on the RCMP losing credibility. We've got the Robert Pickton case in BC. We've got RCMP agents that effectively, I don't want to say murdered, but ended the life of Robert Jacansky, and then it looks like they fabricated a story. They all corroborated together, and they all had the same story. The 4 officers seemed to have the same story that contradicted the video evidence that when they wrote their stories, they didn't know that this video was out there.
Well, how about
So,
well, how about
who
the
has the credibility? The RCMP seem to have lost a lot of credibility, and they've come a long way from being Dudley Do-Rights in their red tights and good hat, and they're always getting their man, to the jackbooted thugs that walked into Vancouver Airport, tasered a man to death, that allowed Robert Pickton to kidnap sex workers and didn't give a care in the world because these women, mothers, sisters, daughters, were sex workers, so it wasn't a big deal for them.
Well, and you see this, we see it again, a very specific example on the other side of the country in Montebello, Quebec in 2007. We have police agent provocateurs dressed up in masks, holding rocks, wearing boots that are provoking to try and incite a riot at a peaceful protest. This was covered exclusively by all the mainstream media, but if it wasn't for peaceful citizens identifying these officers and holding them to account, we never would have known that it was actually these RCMP and police officers behind these masks trying to incite a
I
riot
believe it
in
was
Montebello.
the Sûreté de Quebec, not RCMP though.
Okay.
Wasn't it? So it's like a Quebec police force. I don't know if the RCMP operates in Quebec so much. But the credibility of the RCMP has suffered greatly. Greatly. And, you know, when you get caught lying and lying and lying and lying, eventually you have to stop believing what these people say until they can reestablish the trust and reestablish their credibility, and it doesn't seem to be happening. More and more people today are afraid of the police than feel safe by them. I don't know about you, but even if I'm doing nothing wrong, when I'm driving down the road late at night and those red and blues come on behind me, I'm afraid. And it's not because I'm afraid because I'm doing anything wrong. I'm afraid because of past history, numerous times of police brutality or police abusing their authority, thinking that they're not going to get caught. So this is what we've established about the Canada Day terrorist plot. That the alleged perpetrators were very poor and had very limited access to funds to pull this off. That the RCMP was in complete control of the explosives the whole time, and that it is very hard to establish a motive because these people were linked to heavy drug use. So, what do you think, Greg? What can people do?
Well, I think people can go to our website, wearechangevictoria.org or freedomfreeforall.com, and email us. Join the conversation. Go to our social media sites on Facebook and on Twitter and join the conversation. What questions did we miss? What other pieces of this case have yet to be established? And come in and join the conversation. You can find us online or email us stop_codex@hotmail.com. And let us know what you think, because we need to get the community involved. Other things you can do is you can call into local radio stations. Call CFAX 1070 and call in and voice your opinion. Call CBC Radio, and really be part of this, because this has only happened 4 days ago, and so this is when we need to get the information out and ask the real questions.
So what do you think? Was this a false flag terrorist attack in Victoria? Or was it the pipe dreams of some drug-addled, self-radicalized people that were willing to bomb and harm Canadians? My name is Josh Steffler, and I'm with wearechangevictoria.org, joined by Greg Hill.
With freedomfreeforall.com.
Another edition of Rhodes Rage. On this edition of Rhodes Rage, I'd like to share some information concerning an act that we hear a lot about. All of our good members of Parliament in Ottawa, they are debating an act called the S7 Act, which I have here in my hand, and which is stated it can also be called the Combating Terrorism Act. Well, this is a pretty amusing situation. We have all these characters in Ottawa debating this piece of work here, and they're accusing one another of being soft on terrorism or unconstitutional with the regards to the criminal code, and this is very amusing.
You're soft on this. You're soft on this. What I find the government is soft on is the basic principle of the rule of law.
Why is the NDP always soft on crime and soft on terrorists?
12 months in prison without being charged? What is happening here, Mr. Speaker?
They pose a threat that they can be detained without trial. In this bill, people can be held for 12 months without without a conviction.
This is very amusing. I would like to suggest that they're right. You know, we are being soft on terrorism. That's true, and that's not a good thing. Well, let's see, terrorism. What can we look at as an example of terrorism? Perhaps, 9/11, have you ever heard of that one? Have the people ever heard of architects and engineers for 9/11 truth? Here we have these people saying that these terrorist acts are being done all over the place, time and time again. And here when we take a good, long, hard look at these atrocities, we find them doing drills simultaneously that resemble the actual acts of terrorism going on. Wouldn't this be a better way to not be soft on terrorism, to actually investigate the terrorist acts? For instance, would it not make sense that they would be conduiting their atrocious acts through the bureaucracy with a drill scenario? Well, this would be, in my mind, a logical, deductive examination of the facts. And that's what's not happening, is the people are going on and on about acts of terrorism when they're not actually investigating those acts to any reasonable degree whatsoever.
Terrorism is indeed within our midst.
Integrated teams within the RCMP, with the cooperation of the FBI, have succeeded in dealing with this threat very quickly and very effectively.
Terrorism is something that is very real, and it's there today. If you provide a tool in the toolbox for a law enforcement agency and they never use the tool, doesn't mean that the tool is useless. There could be opportunities, or there might be situations that arise in the future where the tool could, in fact, be effective.
Hopefully, we will not need to use the measures in this bill because our security agencies are doing such a good job. But it's a good insurance policy to have in case, for some reason, the existing toolbox does not serve in every occasion.
What we're talking about is legislation that takes away basic fundamental rights.
I mean, honestly, folks, how long has it been since 9/11? 12 years now? And here we are, we have these people actually still not understanding that imploding a building, in 110-story building under 10 seconds isn't suspicious. What sort of softness on terror are we addressing here? Well, we are addressing the complete abdication of the responsibility of government to do an intelligent analysis of who the terrorists are and what their acts really are, instead of these atrocious acts that are just simply designed to disarm the people of their rights and their prerogatives in the name of chasing boogeymen, when the real boogeyman has left his fingerprints all over these crime scenes. Could we actually stop being soft on terrorism in terms of our complete failure to intelligently examine the evidence surrounding the acts of terror that we see?
Is that what we want to do? To imprison people based on what they're suspected of?
Government, they like to fearmonger. They like to scare people. Let's pass laws. Let's build big buildings and big prisons and throw everyone in them. And let's put 3-4 people per cell Oh, isn't it great in Canada? What a great country. Yeah, very nice country indeed.
Their favorite expression towards people who actually criticize or analyze any foregone conclusions is they will label you a conspiracy theorist. Oh yeah, conspiracy theorist. Let's see. The predatory ruling elite have never conspired to exploit the people before, huh? And on this subject of running drills, I mean, do we not know that the government was running drills during 9/11? Do we not know that the government was running drills in many of these theater shootings that we've heard about? Do we not know that the government was running drills at the recent Boston bombing?
And they're going to change all of that just because of what happened in Boston.
Isn't that just slightly curious? Maybe we should investigate the people behind organizing these drills that emulate the very crimes that are being committed in advance. Shouldn't this arouse just a little suspicion? Maybe a healthy, raising of the eyebrow and going, things that make you go, why would they be running a drill that completely mimics the very act? Did they have some knowledge beforehand? Oh yes, I'm just being a conspiracy theorist. Well, I think in order to understand any hypothesis, having a theory might just work long enough. But my question is this: when do we go from theory to fact? Like the fact that you cannot drop a building into it through layers of concrete and steel. I mean, you know how steel's put together, right? And they lay concrete, they have mesh in it, and it's really hard, and it's not something you easily go through. So you're gonna go through 10 stories in 1 second just like that, and you don't think there's enough evidence to arouse suspicions for a conspiracy? Please, people. It's time for us to wake up. It's time for us to ask questions as to why they're messing with the criminal code. It's time to ask questions as to why they are turning their focus on the very people they're supposed to protect instead of the very people who have assaulted them. Sure, right. Some guy in a cave in Afghanistan is responsible for all these things, so we'll go after Al-Qaeda. Indeed.
You could be held with preventative arrest based on the word of a peace officer, that you could be just held without a warrant, without charges. And someone who knew somebody who may be a threat could also be held. Well, under this law, a peace officer could believe they might be possibly thinking of terrorist activity, and they could be held for detention 24 hours, no charges.
So in summation, we would just like to point out that this sort of draconian interference with our rights is just the sort of thing they need to facilitate their draconian methods of operation, like the ones that we saw at Montebello or the G20 in Toronto, when the black mass perpetrators were ignored and the people got incarcerated instead of the other way around.
In light of the recent G20, where there were numerous abuses of civil rights, that the police were left embarrassed, that it's been brought to court, why he believes that both the Liberals and Conservatives support this broad sweep against ordinary Canadian citizens.
This is the sort of thing that allows the secrecy and the clandestine methods of a corrupt legal system to continue to ignore the facts and continue to fail in their obligation to properly protect the people.
Being able to take someone without a warrant, being able to force them before these investigative juries or judge without any warrant.
The bill is not only ineffective and unhelpful for fighting terrorism, it also represents a direct threat to the freedom of my fellow citizens.
Totalitarian states are always very effective at a certain thing because they don't have the rule of law. We are different because we have the rule of law. We are different because we have the rule of law.